welcome to the show. We got a great show planned for you this week. My buddy and yours, Kyle Lovern, is coming back on the show. He's the author of Appalachian Case Study UFO Sightings and Encounters, Volume 1 and 2. And he also did this picture book, Memories of the Tug Valley. There's lots of cool old pictures here of Williamson, West Virginia and surrounding areas. So be on the lookout for those books. If you've had a sighting of a UFO or a ghost or a time machine or anything, send us an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. Without further ado, here is returning champion Kyle Lovern. Kyle, what's going on?
Hey, it's good to be back. Been a lot going on since we talked last time. Of course, the government report was released on the UAPs, as they call them now, unidentified aerial phenomena, instead of UFOs. But I think we can talk a little bit about that, even though I don't think they really gave us a whole lot of information, and that's about what I expected. But I thought we could talk about that. And been a few sightings around, I've noticed, in different states. And our Facebook page gets reports from sightings in our region all the time in Appalachia. So it just seems like been a little bit of a surge in sightings lately for some reason. There's a couple of stories from my books in the past I thought might be interesting for folks to hear about, and hope we can get to those.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't like the UAP thing. It just needs to go away.
Well, I printed it out, the report they made available, and, you read it, there's not a whole lot to it. It's vague, and, but the main thing that's, I think, good for those of us who believe is, they investigated over about 145, and they admit that over 140, maybe 141, 142 were unidentified, So that tells you right there that there's something. And then I think the fact that some of these military pilots are now coming forward and talking about it. You see some of the shows on interviews on TV, either they've retired or they're just not afraid to come forward and talk anymore like they were in the past. And, there's some of them that have taken the actual videos through their in their fighter jets, or even a couple have done it with their cell phone. So that those Tic Tac videos, as they call them, and there's been some others. The one that sort of looked triangular shaped. One was off the coast here at the Atlantic coast, closer to us, and then, of course, others were out off the west coast. And it, people that don't believe, surprises me that they don't believe. I mean, there's just so much evidence now, and good, credible witnesses are coming forward that I think if you take a poll now, most people do believe there's something to UFOs.
Yeah, it's swinging in our favor now. It's funny how it's switched around, because used to, like, they were calling us crazy, but now it's more like they're crazy than I believe it. Yeah,
and I think it's more skeptical than saying crazy, although that used to be probably how it was in the 50s and 60s. And I think people start changing even in the 70s and 80s, and more people, probably a lot of people did believe, they just didn't admit it. But now people aren't as hesitant to say, that they don't believe. They're willing to come forward because they're seeing more people just like them have either seen something or just believe, because the evidence is out there, pictures, video, and so forth.
I think it might be why they're leaning more toward calling them UAPs now, because there's such a negative connotation with UFO.
Exactly, flying saucer, UFOs, and that's why I think they wanted to come up with something different, as you said, the unidentified aerial phenomena, the UAPs. So, and that's okay. But one part I wanted to read here that I highlighted on the part, it says, UAP clearly pose a safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. I mean, safety concerns primarily center on aviators contending with an increasingly cluttered air domain. UAP would also represent a national security challenge if they are foreign adversary collection platforms or provide evidence a potential adversary has developed either a breakthrough or disruptive technology. You know, and you've got like Senator Marco Rubio, who was a presidential candidate out of Florida, who's chairman of the Defense Committee there with the U.S. Senate. I mean, he has come forward and said, look, these things are flying over our air bases and our territory. We need to know what they are. You've got some pretty influential people now that are asking questions and wanting these investigated, and they're saying, if you are investigating, we need to know about it. You know, you don't need to keep it secret anymore, and that's why they asked for this report. And again, the report came out, at least the one they released to the public, is pretty vague. Maybe they, have gotten a more in-depth report than we have, because, you know, things are still secret when it comes to security and so forth. But, yeah, here it is. I said 145. It's actually 144 reports that that Pentagon group investigated over that period of time. So, you know, that's a lot, a pretty high percentage of the ones that they couldn't identify, too.
They let a lot of Congress and people like that see the whole report, so hopefully it'll just be a matter of time before they start leaking that stuff out to us.
Well, you know, a lot of journalists have used the Freedom of Information Act and other and put pressure on certain organizations and certain politicians, and I think that eventually we'll get more and more information released to us.
Yeah, I believe it's coming.
You know, and there's another part here in the report that I highlighted. It says, in 18 incidents described in 21 reports, observers reported unusual UAP movement patterns or flight characteristics. And you can tell by the video and the voice in the background of those pilots, these things are doing, making moves and using speeds that we're not capable of doing. I mean, we don't have that kind of technology or aircraft. And the G-forces, if we did have a pilot in there that was moving that fast, they wouldn't make it. I mean, the body can't take it. So obviously these aren't something from that we have, and I don't think the Chinese or Russians or anybody has that kind of technology either. So they got to be coming from somewhere.
Yeah, it don't seem to be man-made, does it?
No, not at all.
They'll take off and go into the ocean just as fast as what they're going out in the sky.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. It seems like there's a lot over nuclear power plants, even power stations, and then a lot around water. You know, and then they go into the water. You know, people say, "Oh, where are they?" You know, there's lots of places they can hide. I mean, the oceans are so dense, and you know, just like area Appalachia. You know, and I know you fly over it. You see a lot of mountains. You see a lot of areas that there's nobody within miles of, and that's not counting even other places in the world, you know, desert areas and so forth. So, and if they don't want to be seen, you know, we don't know. They could have cloaking devices or, you know, interdimensional capabilities. If they can fly faster than light speed, then, you know, the human eye can't see them anyway. I saw some video on just the other night on one of the shows that I was watching, and with the naked eye, they were filming these jets. This was down in Chile, which that government has. They have a lot of sightings in South America, and especially in the country of Chile. And they were just filming their Air Force doing some maneuvers. It was like a flight show. But when they showed it back and they put it in slow motion, they saw these two objects go right in front of those planes so fast you couldn't see them with a natural eye. But you know, once they slowed down the video, there was something, an orb or something went right in front of them in the flight path. So, you know, a lot of times that's the reason we can't see them.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I saw a video, I think it was on Paranormal Caught on Camera, I want to say, on that show. They were showing a clip of a drone that was just flying around. The guy was filming like scenery and stuff around the ocean and rock cliff and stuff like that, and flowers. And when he's playing it back, there was something that flew by his camera on the drone, and he didn't even see it.
He didn't see it while he was actually doing it until later. And that happened with even photos. people maybe be taking a picture of the sunset, and then when they look at the pictures, they print them out, they see, hey, what was this?
They slowed the video down and stuff. It was freaky. It kind of had that tic tac shape, and it came up around the water, out of the rock cliff and thing there, and just zipped right by the drone. The guy didn't even know it was there.
As you say, tic tac, or even some triangular shape, no wings. You don't see any form of propulsion behind them. I mean, these things are maneuvering like bouncing around. It's unbelievable. And something else I highlighted here said out of those reports that the government issued here, it says 11 reports of the documented instances in which pilots reported were near misses with the UAP. That's what we're just talking about, how they flew right by them. And it's almost like they were playing with them, It's like, you guys can't do this. We can shoot right by you before you even realize it. Mm-hmm. And it's got to freak those guys out, as you said. But, you've got different military agencies. You've got the Navy, the Air Force. It's not just one particular government entity or military that has seen these. It's various ones. And, I started thinking, and I think others too, I saw another show there on, I think, the History Channel. We've come up now with a new military, they added the Space Force. Why would we do that all of a sudden, I mean, they're putting billions of dollars into that, and there's got to be a reason for them to come up with a whole new branch of the military.
I saw where they call their version of like soldiers, they call them guardians. It's pretty neat. Yeah,
and the logos. I mean, there's just, and I think it's been something in the works for a while, but it's reality now. I said if I was younger, I might try to join. That'd be pretty neat.
I wonder that the meteor that hit Russia that time in 2013, there was something that kind of shot down at the meteor and kind of deflected it away, and they were saying it was a UFO at the time, but it kind of makes you wonder if it would have been like the Space Force back then, just it was still under wraps at the time.
Who knows? They keep so much from us, but and then of course these other countries they're doing their own investigation. They have their own reports. I mean, there's been reports of crashed UFOs in Russia and China, Mexico, other places besides our most famous one of Roswell and probably other cases. And and now with everybody has cameras and being able to video with their phones, we're going to start seeing more and more, I think, good pictures and some decent video. And it's going to be hard for them to keep it secret. And I said this before, I think, and that. I understand back in the 50s when Truman and Eisenhower were president, they were afraid people would panic, and even in the 60s that they couldn't handle the fact that we're being visited by whoever. But times have changed. This is 2021. I think people, they're not going to react the same as they did all those years ago, and people would not panic or freak out as much as they would, and there are more people believe.
Yeah, the thing that they released back in April last year on the Tic Tac stuff, it should have been like worldwide news and stuff, and it just kind of, people blew it off like, oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like they didn't even care. Years past, that would have been bigger news, but now, but what I have noticed is, like, sometimes I watch national on Fox News, and like people like Tucker Carlson are taking it serious. And if, like, when the Tic Tac videos come out or this report come out, he actually has a segment on his news show and talks about it. He's interviewed, different people like politicians and others. So in the past, when they did those reports, it was sort of tongue-in-cheek, Yeah. Now they're taking it serious. I mean, he definitely seems like a believer. There's a pretty big, well-known newsman who has a nightly talk show. Even back when Larry King was still doing his thing on CNN, he had several times that he had people on there, like my friend, the late Stanton Friedman, and people on there. He'd have guests on there, and he would talk about UFOs. So, you know, a lot of their big-time journalists are taking it serious now, and that, it makes me feel good.
Yeah, they always had the X-Files theme queued up when all the reporters start laughing and stuff.
Make a little joke about it, or, you know, well, the little green man, or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, they're starting to come around. You can tell Tucker Carlson, Larry King, they're believers, you can tell.
Oh, yeah, and others too, but especially him. He's had several here recently that he's had reports on his show, and I saw he was even interviewed on one of the shows on the History Channel. They interviewed him about his interest, and you know, and it was a long segment, and he talked a lot about it.
That's pretty neat. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was. The former Secretary of Defense from Britain. That's on a lot of their shows. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he was the one doing.
Oh, Nick Pope.
Yeah, Nick Pope, and he's doing the interview in Carlton.
Yeah, he's Nick Pope. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's on a lot of their shows. Yeah, so him and certain ones. Travis Taylor, the PhD, he's doing that one, that Hunt for the Skinwalker. They've been doing those investigations of the Skinwalker Ranch out in Utah, and he's usually on some of the others like Ancient Aliens, and you know, and there's so many different shows on there now that look into these UFO reports, and that they get certain experts and they like to use them. And these guys are pretty intelligent guys.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I've got a friend at work. I've been trying to get him to come on the show. He saw an alien one time in Lenore. Him and a bunch of his buddies were walking on the railroad tracks, and they saw a big, tall, skinny thing standing on the railroad track. And as they got up close to it, they spotted their flashlight at it, and it just kind of like was just suddenly over by the rocks and stuff. It just kind of zipped over. They didn't even see it move. It was just there.
But yet they don't want to talk about it, I guess. You know, again, some people are still a little bit leery about coming forward. That's what I like about some of my two books, and then the third one I haven't been able to get printed, but I hope to do one day. There's a lot of good stories that I did get some people to come forward and talk, you know, which we may talk about a couple of those stories a little later on the segment here. But you know, one other thing I wanted to add about with the government, you know, with the UAPs, the unidentified aerial phenomena, now the Navy has come up with a standardized incident report that their pilots can actually report what they saw if they have an encounter or they see something. Where in years past, if military pilots or even regular airline pilots saw something, they didn't want to report it because they were afraid that they would take their license away, or they would look at them differently. And you know, they were even told, "Hey, you better not say anything. If you see something, just keep it quiet. They'll pull your license, or they won't let you fly for a while." But now they're coming up with a way they can officially report something when they see it, and that's good. So that'll make it a little bit easier for some of these trained pilots to report something when they see it, and they won't be hesitant about doing it.
We had Terry Lovelace on quite a while back. He was in the Air Force, and when they had their big sighting and abduction, the big thing that was like a big Walmart building that took him and his friend, Terry was always a photographer. He enjoyed taking pictures and stuff. He had bought a camera and had filmed everything that he was going to take with him on that trip, and he forgot and left it at the house. So when he got back on the base, all the Air Force folks got wind of their abduction and their sighting. They started hounding him, trying to get Terry's film. They said, "We know you're into photography. You've got pictures of this thing. We want to see it." And he's like, "Well, I'm telling you the truth. I left it at the house."
Yeah, I've listened to that episode of your podcast, and it was very interesting. And he definitely had a interesting encounter, him and his friend. And very believable. And again, credible witness there that's come forward and talked about it. You talked about seeing things now, and that meteor that landed in 2013 we're coming up on, I think it's the Perseid showers that are in August.
Oh, yeah, it's about that time.
Yeah, those are always pretty neat, and they're going in from late July into August. And then there's times in the past that I've went out and seen those and had a good clear view of them, and I hope to maybe see them again here in the next 2 or 3 weeks when they're at full peak. You got to get out away from light sources and where it's pretty dark and hope for a good clear night. I mean, you have them all year long, but a lot of times it's in the winter when it's really cold out. But these are usually in August, and sometimes there's some clear nights. I know you and I've talked about it before. A lot of times around here it gets foggy and you can't see them. But sometimes I've had some instances where I've seen several per minute of the Perseids in the August. So it's something to look forward to. And who knows, when you're out there looking for those, maybe we'll see something else.
Yeah. It's always cloudy. Every time there's a meteor shower, I don't know what to do with it, or raining or something.
These last a little longer, so, there's always 2 or 3 days where they're really at peak, or maybe a week, so they give you a little more time to see these than it does some of the others.
I saw them one year really good. It might have been the same one you're talking about. It seems like it's probably been like 10 years ago. I was seeing a bunch of them, just like every 30 seconds I'd see one shoot by.
Yeah, I did that, and I know before I lived here, I lived down the old neighborhood where we grew up, Nolan, Warland area. I just took a lawn chair out, and after midnight, and man, I was just seeing them all over. I was just sitting there just enjoying the light show. They were just every little bit, a few seconds, when some of them seemed pretty close, about 10 years ago I went out and saw some, and weren't quite as often, but I still saw a few. It's pretty neat. So I think this might be a good year, though. They're predicting it might be a couple nights that you can go out and get a good view of them.
I'm still kicking myself for not being able to see those Starlink satellites. I've looked for those for months now, and I never can catch them at the right time.
It's tough. If we could go where there's a higher altitude and where it's a little clear, even above the fog, and a good clear night sometimes, and you got to know which part of the sky to look at. There's a lot of things out there, satellites and so forth, but might get lucky to see something else. Me
and my buddy at work always quarrel about how our boss got to see Starlink that time, and he's not even really into that kind of stuff.
That happens.
We're like, man, why did he get to see it, not us?
Yeah.
It would have been comical. My boss said he was out in his hot tub, and he saw him going over. He thought we were being invaded. He ran in the house.
But, sometimes we have those surges or waves of UFO sightings. I've got a feeling we're coming up on maybe a period where we're going to get a lot of sightings. There was actually, they said, a lot of reports last year, and they said they thought a lot of it was because of people were home, where they were quarantined, and they were spending more time. There wasn't much on TV, maybe more time outside, and we're looking up, and so it seemed like there was a lot more UFO cases or sightings reported last year, 2020. So, but there seems to have been a few this year already. So, with all the interest now, I think people were paying a little more attention. Like one guy told me once, how many people actually look up and pay attention. A lot of people don't, but I think now, maybe with all the publicity, more people are paying a little more attention, and there's maybe going to be some more good sightings reports, and maybe even something like we had back. I know you don't remember it. When I was a teenager in 1973, it was early fall, late summer, early fall. There was the mass sightings every night. And they were even getting reported then nationally. So I'd love to see a time like that again, where you're getting hundreds of sightings and reports.
Yeah, it seems like we're due for another big surge like that.
I think so.
I was seeing all kinds of cool stuff back in the 90s, and then just all of a sudden around 2002 or so, I've not really been seeing it much.
Yeah, and of course I hate the fact that you didn't get to see the one daytime sighting that I wrote about when I was still with the paper there. Just about now, it's been, about 9-10 years ago, in October. That sighting.
Yeah, been about 9 years.
It's crazy. Time flies. But, that was pretty cool. And, again, I love that because not only did I get to witness it myself, but you had hundreds of people saw it, multiple witnesses, which I think is good. And you've got some reports on the news, not only locally, but even some national. And I even got a couple of calls from folks asking about it, and it was definitely an interesting sighting.
Still cracks me up that they tried to explain that away as being like internet balloons and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. They always come up with some lame excuse.
I guess in the 40s it was a weather balloon, so now they got to say it's an internet balloon now.
Yeah, or some kind of internet.
Thank you. If it was that, it would
the old adage, the one that they saw in Michigan there in the 60s was swamp gas.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, how dumb do they think we are?
You'd think if it was the new technology around 2012 that they had internet balloons and stuff, you'd be seeing those things everywhere by now and people would know what they are, but
exactly,
there's not been any more sightings of it.
Well, that was, I got lots of calls on that one, and then that's how I actually ended up getting to see it. I was working that day and got a call from a lady, and as you know, you've done a little report on that. You got a little YouTube documentary on it. Actually, you did a good job with that. And, but I continued to get messages all that evening on Facebook or emails. I say, hey, what is this? Did you see it? I think, yep, I sure did. This is a UFO. Or a UAP now, as they say. But that leads me into, I like it when, it's one thing to have one or two witnesses that see something, and then a lot of times people will say, oh, well, it can be explained away. It was a satellite or whatever, meteor, and maybe it was. But the one case that I talk about in my second book, about the mountaintop miners witness alien lights, I know you enjoy that one, and I just recently talked to the guy that was the one I interviewed about that worked on that at that location, which was Marbone Development, which is real close to where you and I both live, for those folks that are listening other places here in the southwestern West Virginia. But his name is Lloyd Mills. He's a Navy veteran during the Vietnam era, and he was one of the supervisors on that mountaintop removal. And for those that don't understand that, that's where they go up and they're taking the coal off of they're blasting the top of the mountain off, and they get down to the coal and they're removing the coal. They had a pretty big operation down there, and this was a night shift near the Lenore-Naugatuck area. All of a sudden, they saw this light come right over top of them. I mean, and you're talking about probably 40 or 50 miners were working there outside at that time that saw this, and it beamed a light down on certain parts of where these guys were working. And I mean, they were on the radios talking about, hey, do you see this? I mean, so you had multiple witnesses there of good, salt of the earth people that saw this, during this time. And I'd heard rumors about it a few years ago, but nobody would talk about it. And then finally, I guess a few years later, these guys, some of them started coming forward. And then once I did my story, I had a couple other people messaging, yeah, my dad worked there, or my uncle worked there. He talked about it. He saw it, I mean, they were getting on there at the time. They communicated to each other from one side to the other, because they were on two different mountains across from each other by CB radio. And, they were like, what's those lights coming up the holler, It looked like two big headlights, they said, and it just flew right over top of them, shine a beam down on some of the miners themselves, or parts of the mine. And it's almost like they were interested in what these guys were doing. What are they doing mining this coal? Or, as we talked about before, it seems like they're always interested in nuclear bases or power plants, certain things, and military installations. And I think the same thing in this situation. They were curious on what was going on.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It could have been what it was. They were trying to figure it out. Well,
maybe that's one theory I have, but one of these times I'll have to take you and introduce you to my witness and let you talk to him. You'd really enjoy that and hear it firsthand from him. And they saw this over a period of time. I had another guy that was a lot younger than some of the others that were working there. It was one of the big truck drivers at the time. He messaged me a little bit later after the book came out and said he was working there at the time and he actually saw them too. So you had several of these coal miners that saw the UFO flying right over top of where they were working.
Yeah, that's a good story. I always like that one.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's lots of cases like this. I'm sure there's a lot that we haven't even heard about, but I've had some people that have been willing to come forward and talk to me, and I'm sure there's others out there. So if there's anybody listening, hey, contact us. We'd love to hear your story.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy that I want you and I to go talk to, who's a former deputy sheriff here in Mingo County, and supposedly he had a really good sighting one night working third shift right over the town of Williamson, and never really got to talk to him about it, but he's from our area, still around as far as I know, and I'd love for us to go talk to him and hear his story and see what he says. In fact, I think he actually called somebody and reported it, one of the National UFO Reporting Centers, and hey, what's going on here? What is this?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's good with it's like Lonnie Zamora case out there years ago in New Mexico. He was a decorated policeman who was actually chasing somebody, a speeder, when he noticed something else out in the desert with some bright lights, and he decided to back off the speeder and go over and check that out, and he actually saw a UFO land, and that's one of those cases that's been on several of the television documentaries and stories, the Lonnie Zamora case, and again, a good credible witness. And then the next day, you had military people coming out, and he took them right to where he saw it. You saw indentations in the dirt where he saw it land, and so the vegetation was burned, and even some footprints, and and they had people investigating it and taking pictures, and I think even Project Blue Book at that time was still there. They came out, and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was, of course, came out first, was sort of a skeptic, I guess, and he ended up becoming a believer and being a staunch supporter that there's something to these UFOs. He actually, I think, witnessed some himself, and I think the only reason at the beginning because he was hired by the Air Force and the government to, hey, you need to come out and investigate these and prove that there's nothing to it. But once he got into it, he realized, I can't do that. There's something to this.
That Lonnie Zamora story, that's always been one of my favorites too.
Yeah, that's a real good one. But you can get on the internet and look. As you and I know, the National UFO Reporting Center, and MUFON's still around. I'm not a big fan of MUFON. I don't care to tell them that. I used to be a member, but got a little disenchanted with them. But if there's cases you can go on the web now with the internet and see sightings all over. But that's what I like about it. And you really credit you with that Appalachian UFO Research Society Facebook page, where we get a lot of good reports on that from our region, and that's pretty neat.
We had this guy from India like a month ago. It's really hard to read his English and stuff.
Right.
He was wondering why we have UFOs here and not in India. And I started thinking, I don't remember ever seeing any kind of famous reports out of India.
I'd say they're all over the world, but probably just nobody in particular, maybe has reported them there, but I think they've been seen everywhere.
My uncle would always talk about one that he saw on that Nolan Railroad Bridge.
Yeah.
That he was going home one night, walking across the bridge, and he looked up and saw, looked like stars just going around in circles and stuff way up in the atmosphere. I thought that was pretty neat.
Okay. Yeah, I had some guys from down in that area. A couple of them are in my books that lived down in that area that had sightings in that same area around the bridge there. We had the toll bridge and the railroad bridge. A couple of my stories. These are good, credible witnesses. These guys that talked to me and reported it. And my dad, I've never talked much about it, but he saw a couple things down in that area. He was an outdoorsman and hunter, and when I was a kid, I remember him just telling me, he's like, yeah, I saw some pretty strange lights, over that way. And then, of course, my side, one of my first sightings when I was young, like I say, about 9 years old, or mid-60s, me and my family saw one about this time of year, summertime, sitting out on our front porch, come right out of Kentucky. And at that time, I'm thinking there were three of them, like one in the front, two in the back. But now I'm wondering if it was maybe triangular shaped, because you're a young kid. You're of course fascinated, and that's been a long time ago. But I'd love to be able to travel back in time and see it again, or wish I'd had a camera or something. But my sister, I talked to her about it. She doesn't remember it. I don't know if I remember her getting scared, so I don't think she wanted to remember it. But we saw it, and it wasn't quite dark. It was about this time of evening, getting toward dusk, so you could see them, and it was pretty neat. Once you see something, it definitely it brands that into your subconscious, your brain. You never forget it, and you always remember it.
My wife and her brother saw that one in Dayton, Ohio. It was right over top of their trailer, and they watched it for 30 minutes, and it was just, she said, like 10 feet above the trailer, just hovering there. And he don't remember it, or he don't want to talk about it or something now. It's
yeah, a lot of people don't want to. They either don't remember or they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to remember it, I think, again, we're on the verge of getting a real wave, or sometimes they even call it a flap, of a lot of UFO sightings. It's getting that time of year, and I hope it is. It's exciting. I think now it'll be even more so, because, like I say, more people are believers, and more people have access to cameras and videos. Maybe we could get some good proof.
Yeah, there's so many security cameras, just like that. They can pick up stuff anytime now. So it's a good time to be a ufologist.
Yep. So, why don't you tell us about maybe one of your sightings? I've told us about mine, and I know you've had a couple of good ones. I
was at Myrtle Beach one year. I was with my uncle and my cousin and my uncle's wife. We had just got into Myrtle Beach in 2000 or 2001, and we were just getting there. It was dark out and everything, and me and my cousin were sitting in the back seat, kind of bored, nothing to do. Just, are we there yet? And we were looking around, and I caught sight of what looked like the moon out of the right-hand window. I was on the passenger side in the back seat, and I was on the driver's side, and he was on the passenger side. So I was looking over at his window and saw on the right-hand side, looked like the moon over in the trees over there, palm trees and stuff, and kept watching it. And then I just kind of turned back and I looked out the left window for a while, and I saw the moon over there, and I was like, okay, now wait a minute. So I looked back to the right, and that thing was still there, just kind of like it was moving along with the car out in the tree line. And I kept watching it, and it was descending. As the farther we would drive, it was going down. And I watched it for a good 5 minutes, and I pointed out to my cousin, and we sitting there checking it out. And at one point, it looked like it was dripping some kind of like white substance from it, like kind of like a glowing milk or something was just dripping out of this thing. And then finally we got into more like the business district, and buildings started coming in on that right-hand side, and then lost sight of it. But I wish that I would have hollered at my uncle or something, hey, let's turn around and go look at this thing.
Yeah. I was thinking of another one I'd forgot about that I had back in I'm trying to see, this was probably in the 80s. Of course, we used to work in radio, and I did news and sports broadcasts, and I was broadcasting Williamson Wolfpack basketball games. And I had this young guy that went with me, because I usually try to take somebody to help me carry the equipment and maybe keep stats. And we went to Wayne, high school in Wayne County, which is, of course, you drive down Tulsa Highway, which we've talked about before. That seems to be like a hotbed here in the area. Been a lot of sightings down that area. And it was winter because it was basketball season. We were coming back up Tulsa Highway, and I remember seeing this big bright light through the trees, and I'm like you, I thought it was a full moon. And the guy that was with me sort of freaked out a little bit, like, what is that? And I thought, oh, it's just the moon. But the more I think back about it, it just seemed to be too big and too bright to have been the moon, and I wish I would have paid more attention to it. I think at that time I was just trying to get back home. It was late, you know. But I had forgot about that until recently, and then that popped in my head one night when I was just lying around. I thought, I need to tell Junebug about that one. And now I wish I would have paid more attention to it. That guy, I don't know wherever happened to him. He's long gone. I think he was from Ohio originally and moved back to wherever. But I just want to remember if he even remembers it, you know, because like you said, he may have blocked it out. But it was pretty wild, big, bright. And now that I think back, it was just too big and too close to be the moon, and it made me wonder. And it was through the trees, and it was a real clear night. It actually snowed a little bit, so there was some snow on the ground. And again, that seems to be an area that I've had. I think you've had a few folks report to you about some sightings down there in Wayne County. That's US 52 between Williamson and Huntington. And I've had other people that have talked about seeing things down in that area. So for some reason, it seems like there's a lot of sightings in that area.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
And of course, if you remember, they used to have that power plant on the Kentucky side there, right across from the Tulsa Highway 52 on Route 23. So
yeah, it's not
maybe a little
far
bit of
from it
there, you know.
Yeah, it could have been something with that. They were checking that thing out.
Yeah,
getting power from it or something maybe.
One that I wanted to mention, I made a note of for our show, is that Virginia UFO wave of 1987 around Withville, which I know you've got that book too, by the former radio news personality that
Danny Gordon
that reported those, and I got to talk to him, and that's a really again, you had multiple witnesses, and that's a great story. Yeah, I got to talk to him when I was writing my book, and ironically, a friend of mine who had heard about my books, and we've become friends on Facebook, and he's got a Facebook page, the Withville UFO sightings. Of course, that's in Wythe County, and this was in, again, the 80s. And that was WYVE 1280 AM radio station that Gordon worked for, Danny Gordon, and he ended up being also a witness, because he was probably like me and you. He went out, he started getting all these reports about these UFOs, and he went out himself and started investigating, and he ended up being a witness. And he had really some strange things happen. You know, he took some pictures, and he had these people show up, starting asking him, questions about it, and then somebody broke into and stole his negatives and pictures, which that's a pretty wild story. Mm-hmm. And it was picked up by the Associated Press and national news, and it was a pretty famous case. And now Sean Kotz, who's teaches film at Radford University there, he's working on a documentary about that case. And he actually came down and interviewed me. And there's a chance I'll be on the documentary, but even if I'm not, I think it's going to be a really great documentary. I can't wait till that comes out. And that, I know he's interviewed Danny over the years, and some other, witnesses from that area. I mean, they saw cigar-shaped and triangular-shaped UFOs over that area. You had law enforcement people that witnessed it. Hundreds of people over a long period of time. And they're in the mid-'80s, and that's another good case from near our region here in Appalachia.
That's going to be a great documentary. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and he's supposed to let me know when he's supposed to have maybe a big debut when he airs it for the first time and try to do a big deal. He said he'd let us know, and maybe we can go down and be special guests and get to watch that.
It was one of those that I saw back in my prime when I was about 14 years old or so on Unsolved Mysteries. There was like 2 or 3 good UFO stories on there that just scared me to death, and that was one of them.
Yeah, I remember seeing that special on TV. They did a whole, like an hour special on National in Whitfield, Virginia. And I thought, wow, that's pretty close. I remember my sister telling me about it. I was like, you better watch that. She's interested in it too. You know, we've had, not only here in West Virginia, but over in nearby Kentucky, several, good stories over the years. We'd mention the CSX train, but I like the one at Stanford, Kentucky in 1976, where the 3 women were reportedly coming back from like a birthday party or something, and they apparently were abducted by a UFO there in Stanford, Kentucky, and that's made some national news in the past. But again, you had 3 credible witnesses. These ladies had no reason to make that up, and it's just so many cases over the years. It's not only now, but it's been over the last 50, 60 years. You've had lots of cases, and many of them in our area.
Where was that one about the screaming noise? Was that around Stanton as well?
Oh, okay. That was near Moorhead, Kentucky.
Moorhead.
The screaming woman, yeah. That's one I was just looking at here. I thought about talking about. But in my afterword, in my second book, I haven't talked a whole lot about this, but and now I saw there's a new show on TV, America's Book of Secrets, on the History Channel, and they recently did an episode about possible disclosure. The government finally coming forward and disclosing some of the information they have. I wrote that, if you remember, and you've read the book, I know, that I thought we were close to disclosure because, back in 2008, during the presidential debates, Tim Russert asked Dennis Kucinich, who was a congressman from Ohio at that time, was a presidential candidate, about his viewing of a UFO. He was at Shirley MacLaine's home out in the Washington State, and they actually interviewed him there on one of those shows. Same thing that I wrote about. And, you've had several other presidents have come forward and talked a little bit about it, but they won't say a lot. Barack Obama, you had Tucker Carlson ask Donald Trump about it, and they were all vague. And Bill Clinton, of course, had talked about it before. Gerald Ford, when he was a congressman, before he became president, he had asked for investigations there in the state of Michigan, where he was from, there in the 60s when they had all those cases. But I felt like that they were trying to prepare us for slowly letting out a little bit of information at a time for full disclosure, because they were thinking people could start to handle it, and I think we're getting to that point where that's going to happen. And I just had to bring that up.
Mm-hmm.
Toot my own horn a little bit. I predicted that a few years ago before. Now other people are coming out. And I know my books wasn't as read nationally as some have been, but as far as regional, they were. You're talking about my title was Moorhead and the Screaming Woman.
Yeah, that's a freaky one.
And that's a really freaky story. That one gave me chills, because I talked to it was a college professor that was one of the witnesses. It was in Rowan County, which is where Moorhead University's at. That's, again, not far from here. And there's Dr. Virgil Davis, who was a psychology professor, actually at Ashland Community College, but I think he taught some there around the Moorhead too. And he had made a report to the National UFO Reporting Center. He and his sons were coming home, and they saw this strange light in the sky, and when they parked, they actually went in and tried to get up on the second floor of their house to get a better view of it. But they heard these strange screams, like a screaming woman, And it turns out that other people in that area heard it too, and they even called 911 and reported it, and the police came out and investigated it. They tried to find, where were these screams coming from, and it was sort of tied to this UFO sighting there in Rowan County in eastern Kentucky. And it was probably about between 9 and 10 p.m. that night. And again, there was a report made about this on the national level, and as David said, his first inclination was just to rationalize the object, what it could have been, but he didn't jump to conclusions, and but he said after he ruled out other possible explanations, he assumed it was a UFO. And like I say, he had him and his two sons that saw it, and several other people reported hearing those screams, and apparently others had saw the strange light too. It was a little eerie, a little bit of a mystery, but it definitely sounded like a female was in distress. One person even reported saying they could hear her audibly saying, "Help me! Oh God, help me!" It made you think, well, she's being abducted, and where was this at? But they couldn't find who it was, or but it was a pretty good case, sort of a close encounter case.
Yeah, that's creepy.
And again, multiple witnesses. So, but I was talking about disclosure. I mean, there was a quote that I have from Bill Clinton. He said, "I want you to find the answers to two questions for me. One, who killed JFK? And two, are there UFOs?" I mean, again, we've had a lot of. We've had two presidents actually said they saw a UFO, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, and they were both governors or governor candidates at that time. Of course, Carter in Georgia, and he saw it with several guys. I think it was either Rotary Club or Lions Club he was speaking at when they came out, and they had spotted it. And eventually, he actually made a report about it. And then, of course, Ronald Reagan was in his plane in California, and he saw a UFO, and even had his pilot try to follow the UFO. So, I mean, people that say, oh, only people that see UFOs are two guys who are drinking a six-pack down by the river fishing, it's not true. I've said it many times. You had Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, and other people like that, like I say, presidential candidates, several politicians, people that have actually seen the UFOs themselves. J. Allen Hynek, I mean, credible witnesses. And why would anybody not believe these kind of people? So it's just I'm thinking more people believe than they don't. They just have always been afraid to say anything, but now they're starting to, I think, be more willing to come forward and talk and come out on record.
Here's a guy that I work with. He's a big believer in ghosts. He's real fascinated with ghost stories, and he watches all of the shows on TV and everything, ghost shows. But every time me and one of my buddies start talking about Bigfoot or UFOs or anything, he just starts cracking up and thinking we're stupid and everything. But I don't understand. He'll believe in a ghost, but he don't believe in UFOs.
Yeah, people have asked me about Bigfoot. I said, well, I'm not sure, don't know, but I said, I'm not going to say there's not, because like you said, I believe in UFOs, so maybe there's something to the Bigfoot story. I actually did see something on Facebook earlier today, and I thought of you, and then I realized that they said it was a hoax, but supposedly somebody had some pictures in Pike County, Kentucky, and apparently it's a website that somebody does about, I guess, more for fun, but the pictures they had were pretty good, even if they were photoshopped or whatever. But there's been a lot of sightings about on coast to coast of a couple of Bigfoots down around Ashland, Kentucky, and they're near us. I think I sent you the link to one of them. Oh, so you did see that one today?
Yeah.
When I first saw it, I thought, oh, cool, and then I realized.
Yeah, it was, I think, like Lake Norman or somewhere like that. They had it on there like a week or so ago. It was Lake Norman, and they showed like the same pictures. This was in Pikeville, Kentucky. Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. I saw some video on Coast to Coast the other day that was looked like a Bigfoot walking across a little small river. And again, it was pretty good, but you never know. Those things can be hoaxed so much. And then that looks like the same video that I saw on Coast to Coast is what these guys are showing on supposedly in Pike County and in other places around. People. That seems to be one of those that people we know. We talked about the Ball Fork monster in our area. There was a guy in a gorilla suit apparently was hoaxing people back in the early '70s. But so it happens, But hey, yeah, I mean, I'm a believer. I've had other people tell me ghost stories. There's a lot of those in this area. Something I might do down the road is to maybe do a story of ghost stories from our area, because we've got a lot of those, as you know. Has some pretty good stories that people told me over the years. So that might be one of those things when I'm retired, have more time to do that.
Yeah, that would be good.
The Bigfoot, that'd be cool if somebody actually saw something like that in our area. I'd love to investigate it. Some people, I know you did the story with Stan Gordon from up in Pennsylvania, that he sort of has tied Bigfoot and UFOs together. And there's some people that believe that for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's just weird. I don't know if it's a interdimensional thing or what the deal is with that. It is crazy that there's been so many around UFOs like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something to it. Who knows? I'm again, you got to be open-minded if you're interested in this kind of story or these kind of cases. You got to be open-minded, and at the same time, you got to be, I won't say skeptical, but you want to be, I always try to weed through the ones that I think are just trying to be silly or joking, but and I feel like I've been able to do that. But at the same time, you got to be open-minded, because I think some people really believe they've seen something. Maybe they didn't. It can be explained. I know I've been on a couple pretty good syndicated radio shows, and that's what I always tell them. I said, a lot of times they can be explained, probably most of the time. But even if it's 80% can be explained, what about those 20% that can't be? And that's the ones that we're interested in.
Yeah, that's all it takes, just one case out of it that's real.
Exactly. And we know we've dealt with enough that seem like there's something to them, and good witnesses.
Well, Kyle, I appreciate you coming on tonight and taking the time to holler at us.
Always. And, hopefully something new will come up in the future. We'll do it again.
Yeah, and people can always reach out to us on Facebook and look up the Appalachian UFO Research Society.
Yeah, they should do that. And if you have a sighting or just a question, send us a message. And Junebug's, I know, is on there a lot more than I am, and does a good job with that. But it's a good little Facebook page. A lot of, if you just want to read about it, there's a lot of people that share their sightings and stories from all over Appalachia, not just here, but as far down as Georgia and Tennessee and Carolinas, up in Pennsylvania. Some of them have some pretty good sightings. I just now got on our Facebook page here, and there's a couple of recent sightings here. One from Buchanan, West Virginia. There's another one from Dallas, Georgia. On the 14th, here's one in Knoxville, Tennessee, on July 11th. So these are Greenville, South Carolina. So there's a lot of good sightings on there, so people can, a lot of people don't always know where to report these sightings, and this way they gives them a place to do it, and maybe read about more of the sightings, and gives them a chance and a place to be able to report their sighting. And we can always try to give more information if they want to report them to a national organization.
A lot of people are leery about MUFON and places like that. They think they're in cahoots with the Men in Black. So we can assure you that we're not Men in Black spies or anything. No. So you can count on us.
There you go. And we're open-minded, and we'll, at least willing to listen to you. And if you think you got a good story, we want to hear it.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work. You do a great job, and hopefully we can do some more investigating herself. And if we get a good case, we'll head out and actually do a personal investigation, like we've done a couple times with the CSX case and some of those.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Awesome.
Well,
and by the way, now I can really say I have implants. As you know, and those folks out there, I had recently had glaucoma eye surgery, and I actually had implants put, one in each eye. So I can actually joke, really say I've got implants. Not necessarily from aliens, though. But I thought you'd enjoy that.
Yeah, and hopefully you start feeling better with that soon.
That's
yeah,
rough.
my eyes been giving me a little trouble. Been a little tough, but I'm on the road to recovery, and hopefully heal up and get the camera and the binoculars, and we can head back out and do some investigations.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
All right. Keep up the good work, man.
Yep, good talking to you, man.
You too.
Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Kyle Lovern. Thanks for tuning in this week. We really appreciate you. And we'll see you again here next week in Dark Places. Take care. God bless you. And see ya.